Joining me on the line is Brendan O'Neill, editor of Spiked Online. He's a signatory of a letter written to the Times to draw attention to Parliament's attempts to institute state-backed regulation by the back door. Hello, Brendan.
Hi, Sam. How's it going?
All right, thanks for joining me. This is pretty shocking. I mean, it might not be to you because obviously this is your meat and drink, and I Spiked Online cover this stuff day in, day out. To myself, the idea that we are 40th in the world is shocking and depressing.
Yeah, I think everyone should feel depressed about this. So this is the World Press Freedom Index, which is a kind of annual report that's released by Reporters Without Borders, and it lists countries according to which ones are good at press freedom and which ones are bad at press freedom. And Britain is currently at number 40. We're behind countries like South Africa, Chile, Lithuania, countries which aren't really celebrated for being super liberal.
Yeah, but how? I mean, we have freedom of the press. Well, how's that happen?
You'd think we did, but things have gone horribly wrong in recent years. What's really striking about the Press Freedom Index is that we are 18 places down on where we were in 2002, which was the first index, and we're 12 places down on where we were in 2012.
So what changed? Was it the Leveson Inquiry? Was it after that?
Yes. So one of the key things is the Leveson Inquiry and the whole culture that comes out of Leveson, which is this idea that the media, the press, particularly the kind of troublemaking tabloid press, is out of control, is a problem, is dangerous, and therefore the cultural elites and possibly even the state must enforce more controls on them. So, we've seen various things. For example, one thing is Section 40 of the Courts and Crime Act, which basically would use financial pressure to make all media outlets sign up to Impress, which, as you guys say, is effectively the first form of state regulation of the press that we've had in Britain since 1695. So that's a long time that we've had the state out of the press's affairs, and now it's kind of creeping back in. So that's just one example of how in the period after Leveson, we've seen a real strangling of the traditional British liberal ideal of press freedom and its replacement with this idea that the press is a problem that needs to be fixed.
But Brendan, there will be people who say that what Leveson exposed was that, elements of the press use those freedoms for actually not particularly noble aims. So when we hear about them, trawling through the voicemails of celebrities to report upon the tawdry details of their sex lives, right?
Illegal,
or what have you, then they can puff their chests out and say, well, we need to hold the government to account, but that's not what they're using those freedoms for.
But the problem is that there's a couple of problems with this line of argument, which I hear quite a lot. The first is that, of course, some press outlets did things that I would not support and which I think were pretty bad. And I know that lots of journalists at those outlets themselves would also agree that it was not, a really good form of journalism. The problem is that what happened with Leveson is not only was it wasn't a specific argument that certain things shouldn't be done by journalists. It became this overarching, huge investigation of the whole culture and ethics of the press. And it really was a means through which people who have hated the tabloid press for a long time, including politicians, including powerful people, including lords in particular, the House of Lords are really dislike the tabloid press. It became a means through which those sections of society could pursue a very political agenda against certain sections of the press that they've always disliked because they tell embarrassing stories.
Well, and the expenses story, that was a big sort of turning point, wasn't it?
The expenses story, or if you look at, the House of Lords is a very good example, because one of the other things that's happened in recent years is that the House of Lords has voted to change the Data Protection Act in Britain so that journalists would have less protection when they are investigating big stories, in terms of they would have less protection of saying, well, this is in the public interest and therefore it's justified that I'm looking into certain forms of data. And the reason the Lords want to make it harder for journalists to investigate things is really not difficult to work out. It's because lots of journalists have written exposés about the behaviours of people in the House of Lords. So we do have a situation very much where powerful people are riding on the back of the argument about phone hacking and the hacking of celebrities.
It's a convenient stick to beat the press with.
It's a conflict of interest, isn't it?
But you're saying the establishment are acting entirely in self-interest to protect their own lives and their own privacies.
Completely. This is very clearly becoming an example of the powerful using their power to clamp down on the press. And we have to remember how important press freedom is to a fair and free society, because it is the means through which we can hold powerful people to account. And they don't want us to do that.
And rich people have power. We saw in America with Hulk Hogan. There was a guy bankrolled him who was trying to get him back. And Mosley's sort of the one in this country bankrolling. So there's sort of an unfair playing field.
Yeah, and, you know, it's true that the rich and the powerful really are throwing their weight around at the moment. I mean, one of the things that's revealed in the World Press Freedom Index published today is that out of 96 media outlets around the world covered the Panama Papers obviously showing that, you know, rich people were shoving money around the world in slightly dodgy ways sometimes. And out of those 96 media outlets across the world, only 2 were sued by powerful actors, and they were the BBC and The Guardian. So the World Press Index says this is really shocking that in Britain, the home of press freedom, the place where this idea was born in many ways in its modern form, is the only country on earth where people were dragged to court for the supposed crime of covering the Panama Papers. So time and again, whether it's the Lords clamping down on the press or rich people using the courts to punish the BBC and The Guardian, we can definitely see a situation where the powerful are now punishing the press for having investigated them. And that's something that really should worry lots of British people.
Brendan O'Neill of Spiked Online, thanks ever so much for joining us. Really interesting stuff. If you want to join the debate on that, 0344 499 1000. Do you think that the press, are you shocked by the fact that we're 40th in the world, this country that's supposed to be a bastion of freedom and democracy, and in fact our press are more restricted than numerous countries in